Hello friends, and welcome to the Hanged Man in the Moon. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to meet you. If you've been here before, thank you for returning. I'm truly honored. Friends, if you are a returning visitor, you know that this is my deep dive into a brilliantly expansive deck called the Egyptian Tarot by the Brotherhood of Light. And one of the decks that I'm using is a very readily available mass market deck. But the original was created by C.C. Zane back in the 1930s. I've got an out of print copy of that, which was published around the time, printed around the time that I was born. And so I keep that one separate and I don't shuffle that. I'm very precious with that one, but my modern, easily replaceable color version of that deck, I riffle shuffle the heck out of it, and every night before I go to bed, I draw a daily draw card. Yeah, I shuffle this question into the deck. I ask, what would I benefit from giving my attention to the following day? And then I pull my daily draw card, and then I pull the matching card from my very out of print charcoal gray and white version of the same deck. And I look at the similarities, but I also notice the differences. And then I ask for help from a deck that I'm becoming more and more familiar with every time I use it, the Tarot of the Holy Light by the brilliant Christine Payne-Towler. And I do a 3-card spread with that deck. Now, that's a deck that I've been working with for a little over 7 months now, I think. I started in July with a deep dive into that deck. Now I'm using that deck for my helper deck for this deep dive. And so I do a 3-card spread. The first card is the significance of my daily draw card for me for the following day. The second card is the challenge for me, either positive or negative. And then the third card is the advice. Significance, challenge, advice. Typical 3-card spread. And then I go to sleep and I wake up and I live my day. And at the end of the day, I analyze the spread. I compare the daily draw card to the spread. I notice the similarities and differences between the associations with astrology, the zodiac, because both of these decks are very zodiacally based. And then I record this video, which is what I'm doing now. So let me show you the daily draw card in 2 versions right now. The daily draw card for me today was the 7 of Wands. Now you notice that they're pretty much the same, right? Yeah, yes, one card is color and one card is charcoal gray and white, but they're basically the same. Okay, yes, the size of the wands was a little bit different in 2 cards. The wands in the older deck are a little smaller than in the more modern color version, yes. The placement of the stars in the constellation you see printed on both cards, they look a little bit different, but they point to the same constellation, and we'll get there in just a moment. You'll also notice that the zodiacal signs at the top are the same, and the planetary attribution is the same at the bottom. So what are those things telling us? It's Sagittarius, right? So the 7 of Wands points to the Sagittarius decanate of Sagittarius and its subruler Jupiter, from which the mutable aspect of mutable fire's vital attributes enter our world. Right, so you know that each of the zodiacal signs has 3 decanates, 3 groups of 10 degrees. And the first group of 10 degrees is the same sign as the sign. Now, the first decanate of the sign is the same as the sign. The second decanate and the third decanate are the next 2 signs of the same element. So going around, the second decanate of Sagittarius should be Aries. And then the third decanate of Sagittarius should be Leo, right? Going right around the wheel. And so, like I said, this is supersized Sagittarius, right? It's Sagittarius decanate of Sagittarius, and the mutable fires, the mutable aspect of mutable fire's vital attributes beaming into our world, carried to us by the subruler Jupiter. So we've got Jupiter bringing all this mutable fire into our world, into our natal charts, into the question we're asking of the tarot when we're laying the spread. So it's a beautiful thing. And this is the first time that the Seven of Wands has appeared for me in this deck, in this deep dive. So that's kind of cool. Something else to learn. And that constellation, the constellation on the card, well, let me show you a picture of that constellation right now. That constellation is called Lyra. Well, you probably saw it in the picture very clearly. It's called Lyra. This constellation here, both of them, they're called Lyra. And what does Lyra sound like? It sounds like lyre, right? Lyre. Do you know what a lyre is? It's a kind of harp. Yeah, it's an ancient, originally, at least the earliest one that I know of is Greek, an ancient Greek instrument called the lyre. And the one up in the sky is the lyre of Orpheus. Now, do you know Orpheus? Do you remember the myths around Orpheus? There are three pretty significant ones. One was that, he was the poet and musician from Thrace that could charm even the stones with his music. He could make the stones enraptured by the grace and beauty of his poetry and song. Because he was a bard, right? We didn't just read poetry and play music. Poetry and music were the same then, very much as they are now, I think. I should not have drawn a distinction there, right? So, yes, poetry, music, bard, a traveling poet with music. Also, he is famous for his attempts to save his wife. Eurydice, his wife's name is Eurydice, and she was killed. She went to the underworld and he went down to save her. And this is the story where, you can walk up, but don't turn back. Don't look at her until you reach the surface. And now some people tell this story a little bit differently. Yeah. Orpheus isn't a stupid guy. He got up all the way he was patient. He got up all the way to the surface. But his wife had not gotten there yet. So he got up to the surface. So he said, okay, I can look now. He turned around, looked at her, and she disappears. Yeah, so that's the one of the other myths around Orpheus. The third one is the one that gives us this idea of the harp in the sky. And that one is that, oh no, there's one more. I'm sorry. There are four. I forgot. There are four. The third one is that he was the harpist for Jason and the Argonauts. Yeah, Jason and the Argonauts had to circumnavigate or get through the trap of the sirens. Yeah, the creatures who would sing and drive sailors mad, and they would crash their ships against the rocks, the sirens. Well, Orpheus's music helped get them past the sirens. That's one of with Jason and the Argonauts. Now the last one is the one that gives us the lyre up in the sky. The last one is that he was killed. Orpheus was killed by the followers of Dionysus, and the followers of Dionysus, the ladies, are called the Maenads. I recall them being pronounced the Maenads. And they get worked up into a frenzy, and in one of their frenzies, they dismembered Orpheus. And so what happens? Well, the muses come down and they collect the parts of Orpheus and bury him at Mount Olympus, and they take his harp and they bring it up to the sky, and that's how we have the lyre up in the sky. So we've got the lyre, the instrument of this brilliant musician, poet who saved the day so many times, who was able to, could charm the rocks, the stones, that could charm the heart of the gods of the underworld, to let his wife loose from their clutches. Yeah. he was able to charm his way through the sirens, the trap of the sirens. This harp was magical, is magical. And so we get that as a side meaning for this card of the Seven of Wands, I believe. And so what else do we get from the Seven of Wands? According to the guidebooks, we got things like teaching or publishing. I'm not in classes yet, but we'll get to that in a moment. Devotion. Yeah, his Ovid, not Ovid. Sometimes I confuse Orpheus and Ovid. Ovid's a poet, different kind of poet. But Orpheus, yeah, he was devoted to his wife, right? Relying on your own judgment, channeling desires, and controlling impulses. Yeah, so we move our desires into things for perhaps for creation, but we're careful of our impulses, which could lead us in a direction that we don't want to go. Because not all impulses are ones that follow the flow of our intention. Protection from, but we do have an idea of protection from danger in the Seven of Wands. Benevolent influences surround us. We're protected. Yeah, we're cared for. We are kept safe from harm. And yet we still want to keep our aims on an ideal. We want to focus on what we want. We want to and disseminate our constructive ideas. We want to share our ideas with other people in the Seven of Wands. There are also things like religion and philosophy helping us with both popularity and business, which is kind of interesting. Business contacts in a church group had nothing to do with me, but I thought that was interesting. Enthusiasm leads to promote. Oh, wait a second. But it wasn't business, but still interesting. Enthusiasm leads to promotion, benefit through professionals, pleasure on a business trip. So the joy of doing business as well is included in the Seven of Wands. But again, things like protection, relying on our judgment, channeling our desires and impulses, and being careful not to just follow impulses on a silly whim. Keeping our aim and our minds on what we really want, what we really think, what is really true for us. And then again, okay, so business contacts in a church group. We might put that on the side, if we can remember that. So this was an interesting card. It was much more beneficial than I thought it would be, frankly, because when we think of the Seven of Wands, for example, in the Smith-Waite deck, yeah, we see this lone guy up on a hill trying to defend his position. It's generally a male-looking form up there, right? Some of the iterations are more female or non-gendered, but in Pamela Coleman Smith's art, it's a definitely male-looking figure up on a hill with one stick, and there are 6 sticks, which we don't see any people attached to, by the way, coming up from below. And I often read that as like unconscious self-sabotaging. Yeah, you know, but it could be real people down there. Standing your ground is one of the most commonly said significances of that card. But anyway, so this card felt much better than I was anticipating it would, especially since Sagittarius can sometimes be a tricky sign. Now, Sagittarius can sometimes feel alone. They're on the front lines trying to push ahead, but it can sometimes be a little bit difficult. But here, not so much, right? So I had a 3-card spread all laid out to help me unpack these 2 cards. Let me show you those cards right now. The 3 cards you just saw from left to right were the 6 of Wands reversed. Now, 6 of Wands was interesting, yeah? We went from the 7 of Wands, and the unpacking card is the 6 of Wands, but in reverse. Then we had the High Priestess. I loved seeing her show up. And then the Devil. Now, we had 2 major arcana upright, but the first card was a similar Wands suit reversed. So that was interesting, a little bit briefly unnerving. I won't hide my feelings, yeah, briefly unnerving, but made me very curious. What would that mean in relationship to this Seven of Wands card that I got for the daily draw. Well, let's think about that together. Let me show you the card upright. This card has shown up for me a few times. Now, the Six of Wands has showed up for me upright on January 26th, February 2nd, and the 10th. And you see the lion and the eagle, they look like they're having a party together to me. They look like they're dancing and enjoying each other's company. We see the six wands around them. We see that each one of the creatures is crowned, right? We also see the discs around them. We see the upward and downward facing triangle with eyes in both of them, the eye of the divine, perhaps. Beautiful card. And we see at the bottom that we have Leo and the Sun, which gives us the idea that the Six of Wands points to the Leo decadent of Leo and its subruler, the Sun, from which the fixed aspect of fixed fire's vital attributes enter our world and from which this beast is born. My sun sign is Leo, the Sun, right? So this is one of my cards. However, this baby came up reversed, right? So instead of being a continuation of the domicile, we have a similar here. Here we also have the Sun in Cancer. Now, upright, it would be just the Sun in Leo. As a reverse, we have the addition of a similar, the planet being in its alternate house. Now, the Sun doesn't really have an alternate house. The Sun's partner is the Moon. And so the Moon's house is Cancer. So here we have the Sun in Cancer. Makes sense, right? So that's kind of a cool thing, an interesting thing. But what does it mean? Well, in reverse, Sun in Cancer turns inward to the private sphere where he is both husband to the Moon and student to Sophia. That's a beautiful image, right? Both husband to the Moon, because the Sun and the Moon are partners. And we generally think of the Sun as more male and the Moon as more female. There are definite reasons why we do that. Not everybody does that. Some cultures do it the other way around, but generally, we, the people of the culture of this kind of deck, generally think of the Sun as male and the Moon as female. The Sun is the husband of Cancer, the house that the Sun is also visiting. And also in that card is the student of Sophia, the student of the divine feminine, the feminine face of the divine. Also the Holy Spirit. What a wonderful thing to be. Yeah. So Sol in this card is instead of being the first among equals, is the last among equals. What does that mean? Yeah. Here, Sol, the Sun, is bringing up the rear, like a shepherd's dog, like a sheep herder. Yeah. Bringing up the rear of the flock, making sure that everything is completed the way it should be completed. We come to a satisfying conclusion. Also here we have the finite making itself known, that there are only so many hours in the day to do only so much stuff. Yeah. Interesting thing. So interesting when it comes to this, that there's that part to it too, right? All of this wonderful stuff, yes, but there are still only a certain number of days. So that idea of focusing on the ideal is a beneficial. This is something that's beneficial to remember when we're thinking of focusing on the ideal. Yeah. Distracting thoughts will waste time. It also tells us how the choices of how we spend our time will have long-term consequences. Yeah, that idea of spending time, and there's not that much time, and the things we choose to spend our time on will have long-term consequences. So choose the right thing to spend your time on. Focus on it, right? Demands of collective and private good ask us to prioritize. And this card is asking us to prioritize the collective over the private, if at all possible. Christine Payne-Towler makes it clear that if the collective is a toxic environment, then no, don't do that. But if it's not, prioritizing the collective over the individual is going to be more beneficial for us in this card. Yeah, making ourselves available to others. And perhaps in doing that, bringing along all of the beneficence of this card for me for this day. So what was the challenge for me? The challenge for me was this beautiful, beautiful, I love this High Priestess card. Now you see her, she's not all that huge. Yeah, she's smaller than the candles on either side of her, which is interesting. Yeah, we've got an arch of stars above her. We've got the sun and the moon. But you'll also notice that on her breast, one breast is the moon and one breast is the sun. So we've got that balancing stuff, a balancing act going, well, that balancing going on here. Like in the Smith-Waite deck, now we have Boaz and Joachim, the dark and the light pillar. Instead of that, we have the moon and the sun breast. And you'll notice that the sun breast is radiating a lot of energy and power. And we'll also see on the sun side, there's another side. On the sun side, there's another sun right here with stars around it, beaming, radiating energy. And on the moon side, it's generally darker, right? But not in the darkness of shadow, just as in comparison of the sun being really, really bright and this moon being less bright. You'll also notice there's an extra moon down there in her root chakra. Beautiful card. I love this card. And so the High Priestess is the moon, right? The moon. So the High Priestess points to the moon, which resides in Cancer, from which it suddenly slipped my mind. From which cardinal waters vital attributes enter our world. Right, cardinal. Next one is Scorpio, which is fixed water. And then the next one is Pisces, which is mutable water. Yes, so, yes, this one is cardinal water. It enters our world, which is, again, Cancer. And this card has shown up for me once before. This card showed up for me on January 13th as the advice card at the end, but in reverse. So I was glad to see this upright for me today. Being the second card, number 2, it also points us to the Hebrew letter Bet. And Bet, it can be a house or home. It can be architecture, like the structure of a home. But it can also be a universal home. The universal home of life being this created universe, right? It can be creation itself. Another thing in Bet is duality. It is the number 2, and it's recognized as two-ness in Hebrew. So duality, male and female, light and dark, are part of Bet as well. When we go to the runes, we have Ansus, which is the wild ox. Yeah, Fehu is the tame, domesticated cattle beast, the ox, or the cattle. Here we have the wild ox, which is strength and energy and speed and courage with understanding and determination. And it moves quicker than the domesticated beast, which is interesting in relationship to a high priestess, right? Of the power and strength, but the natural power and strength. Whereas the first one, Fehu, is the tamed, domesticated power and strength of traditions and wealth. This is the power and strength of natural vitality. And why did my hand do that for it? I don't know. So, who is this lady here on this card? Beautiful, beautiful lady with beautiful, beautiful red flowing hair. She could be Eve. She could be the knower of good and evil, the keeper of esoteric knowledge. She's also the oracle, intuition, inner senses, dream time, visualization. She is all of that. There's an interpretation that, and actually one that I came up all on my own back in the day when I was pondering what I believe to be the misunderstanding of the creation story in the Bible. Thinking that, yes, okay, so if God is love, is God really going to be the one who puts her there, divine create creatures into such peril and make them do something that will cause them suffering in the sense of punishment, original sin? I don't think so. I think we misunderstand that story. And apparently, so does the beautiful creator of this deck, at least to some extent. Yeah, that event of eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge of both good and evil was a moment of evolution. A moment of evolution from the childlike, the infantile state of purity, which is wonderful, but is limited. When we take that bite of the apple of both knowledge of good and evil and discernment and discrimination, and not that kind of discrimination, but the discrimination of wanted and unwanted, of hot and cold, of short and long, and of light and dark. And again, not that kind of light and dark, not discrimination like racial discrimination, but other kinds of discrimination, discerning. That's a step of our evolution, and something that I would think that the creator of a brilliant species would want that species, that those children, to mature into and mature through. Now, that's not the end point. We move through that to a re-understanding of unity consciousness. That's the goal. But reaching unity consciousness without reaching for that discernment is freezing us in an infantile mindset is not something a loving creator would want. Loving creator wants us to evolve to a point of realizing our divinity, I believe. And so Eve, in doing that, in bringing the apple, biting it and bringing it to her partner, was doing the work of evolution. Yeah? So she is the oracle. She is the keeper of esoteric arts, with the intent to open the mind to higher consciousness. Kind of hinted at that with the apple. Hidden realities that support the mundane world are here as well. Yeah, because the mundane world, now isn't that an interesting word, mundane? Mundane, mundo, means world. So the world, just the world, the mundane world. Mundi, world, is supported by spirit. And it's supported by hidden not hidden like you better not look here, but hidden as in not clearly visible to most eyes. That kind of hidden reality that supports what we do see with our eyes and smell with our noses and hear with our ears and touch with our fingers. And as the moon waxes and wanes, so the priestess follows cycles in her not so much presenting, but opening the storehouse of sacred wisdom to us. Yeah? And with her help, the voice of the personal will is met by the even more compelling voice of spirit. Our will and spirit meet here. That duality with Beth meets here in this card. With, again, support from the mysterious, because we don't know it, mysterious. The unseen, because we don't have eyes to see, but it's there supporting what we do see and what we do know. And all of that is part of this card. And so that's the challenge for me, to see through beyond what appears to be apparent. To recognize the power and strength that flows from that, but not perhaps expect that to be the same every day, to expect cycles in that. And to appreciate the power of duality and the truth of duality's place in our evolution. My evolution, your evolution, our evolution. And so the response to that, the advice to that, is to devil. Beautiful card. Not a traditional devil by any means, is it? We have this androgyne figure of a devil, both red and green, and you see spouting from the devil one spout of fire and one spout of water. And that devil is joining a male and female looking figure beneath them. And above them, there's this beautiful peacock, right? The peacock feathers. And we see at the bottom also the attributes of Sagittarius, right? Sagittarius, Sagittarius. So that's important. This is important advice. And this card appeared for me as a challenge on January 15th. That came in the middle on January 15th and reversed as advice on January 21st. So this is the first time this card has appeared as upright advice, to be the devil. You know? And what is the devil? Well, the devil points to Sagittarius, which is the domicile of Jupiter, from which these mutable fires, vital attributes, enter our world again. And it's also Samek. Now, Samek is the Hebrew letter, which looks like a zero in some senses. And so it's support, or a prop, like something that supports something else, a prop, a brace of some sort. It could also be a fish, which is interesting. But it's also something to lean upon, and something that upholds and, again, supports. And the shape of the letter being like an Ouroboros, a snake eating its tail, right, gives us the sense of an endless cycle, also completeness. And shaped like and carrying the significance of a wedding ring for some people, yeah, the promise, the wedding bands, and all of the things that signifies, the joining. Notice down here, the joining of things, right? The bringing of things together. The merging of perhaps dualities, again, from here, Bet. Now, the merging of dualities here. And we also have the rune Algiz. And Algiz is also thought of as the elk, the horned deity. When we think of the devil, we also think of a horned deity, right? Also protection, openness, happiness, life force, power. A lot of power in these cards for me for today. And the Satan figure can be seen as an aspect of Sophia, divine wisdom. Divine wisdom. And we had the sun in here learning from divine wisdom in the card unpacking the Seven of Wands for me today, right? This card in reversed gave us the sun in Cancer, which was the sun being the student of Sophia. And here we got Sophia as a potential understanding for the devil card. Goddess powers reawakening in Trump 15. As she's waking up from her slumber in the material realm, and maybe it's time to get up and get out of here, or at least reascend. It could also be the self and other, dissolve and coagulate, coagulate, solve and coagulate. Dissolve et coagula is printed on the arms of the devil. So here we have the Sizgi, and so many words I'm having trouble pronouncing today. Sizgi, the two into one that begins regeneration, the union of opposites. I for example, animanimus, yin yang. Perhaps not so much the value judgments we think of as good and evil, but other opposites, light and dark. This could also be the union of Christ and Sophia, Osiris and Iris. And the paired deities, Mars and Venus, the sun and the moon, Jupiter and Mercury, which yesterday I got confused about, right? Jupiter and Mercury are Roman. All of the planetary names are Roman names, and I should know that. But yesterday I got myself all confused about that. Anyways, so Mercury and Jupiter and Mercury. Also, the Sagittarian power of desire when focused is unstoppable and irresistible. This power can be dangerously overwhelming if not evolved, individuated, self-actualized enough. And that's the advice, is to, I think, to be all of that, but to be that in my most evolved, self-actualized state. If not, set it aside. But I think this card being upright in this advice place was possibly telling me that I'm in an okay place to be using my willpower, my desire, and focusing it. So what happened for me today? Well, today was a good day. There weren't enough hours in the day to do everything that I wanted, but everything that I did, I enjoyed, and I was happy with it. And I got some work done, and I did some other stuff that wasn't exactly work, but was very enjoyable and very meaningful, I think. I had a very long, continuing conversation with my friend that I talked about in the last video, and that was wonderful. We did a video call. This is not a video call. We had a video call. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, a person from Indonesia who actually teaches at a church and studied theology, and like me, and teaches at both a high school and a church, suddenly asked if they could be my friend. And we had a very long, interesting, enjoyable conversation of opening, not completely, it wasn't that long of a conversation. It wasn't like a therapy session. It was just a first discussion. But in that first discussion, there was a lot of opening of an honesty of what we thought and how we feel about what we're doing. And it was very nice. It was very meaningful to me. Also, a colleague from mine showed up at my door today out of nowhere. We had a very long, interesting, enjoyable conversation as well. So today was a day of conversations, of joy, of interrelations. And then I also did a little bit of work on starting my PowerPoint presentations for next semester. Like I said, I've mentioned several times, we're starting a new book for one of the classes that I teach next semester. And so I want to prepare in advance my presentations for, that would be the second week. We haven't even gotten to the first week, but now I want to start preparing for my second week. So I started that a little bit. I didn't get as much done as I'd hoped I would get done, but I got it done. And I also got my stuff for my Facebook group for Terre de Marseille. That was accomplished, and it was basically a day of good accomplishments and a lot of communication and sharing, and I channeled a little bit of my desire through those conversations, I think. That what struck me was that person from Indonesia, like I said, worked at a church, teaches at a church there. Isn't exactly a business contact, but that person was a contact from a church that just suddenly appeared. One of the meanings of this Seven of Wands. Relying on my own judgment? Yeah, sure. Did I really use all that much discernment in how I was spending my time? Some might say no. I think I did, generally. And I was very pleased. I didn't end the day thinking, oh man, I wasted all this time talking to people and I didn't get enough done. I didn't feel that. I felt like the conversations I had were meaningful and perhaps helped me move more clearly in the direction that I want to be moving in, as my life is starting to metamorphose after, like I said, I took that hit a couple of days ago. So all of that was good. Sun in Cancer. Yeah, I think I did some of that today. And the Sagittarius. I think I was moving into my place at the forefront as the forerunner of my own life and my own intentions, if that makes sense. Yeah. I think I was connected with my intuitions. I felt things, and I felt understandings reveal themselves for me as I was chatting with with a couple of these people, maybe. Um, yeah, I think so. I also started another loaf of bread, if that means anything to you. I thought that was pretty good. So yeah, it was a good day. It was a good day. It was an entertaining day. It was a pleasant day. It was a socially and personally productive day, if not necessarily a business productive day. But I got some good work done on business too. So there we are. And here I am doing this video. That's a good thing too. Don't you think so? If you do, let me know in the comments below. If you don't, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what you would like to see on this channel too, if you have any ideas. What would you like to see me do? I can change my plans. That might be interesting. If you are still here, thank you very much, and hit that thumbs up button. YouTube sees those and draws more people to the channel. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and hit the alarm bell. Next week, I'm going to be paring back to only 3 videos a week. You might want to get the alarm when I upload those. And yes, comment below. I would love to hear from you. If you want to get these decks, as usual, the links are below. You can get this deck, this beautiful, beautiful deck based on the Continental Tarot system by Christine Payne-Towler, called the Tarot of the Holy Light. Get this. It's links in the description box below. The color version of this Egyptian tarot there's a link to the Amazon page for this one as well. Go get one of those too. I highly recommend both. I am growing a lot as a reader because of my work with these decks. And so I recommend them. And if you want to, speaking of reading, if you want a reading from me, my email address is in the comments below. Send me an email. We can get you a reading, however you want. You know, we could do it by Zoom. We could do it by just plain old video, by photo and email, whatever. There are many, many possibilities. So, friends, thank you for being here. Thank you for walking this journey with me. And as always, I wish you love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Thank you.